The woods have teeth. Retired Detective Henry Vale learned this truth halfway up Black Ridge, where the Appalachian Trail twists into a throat of pine and shadow. He'd come to hike away the nightmares, the unsolved cases, the faces he couldn't save. But the forest had other plans. The shack appeared at dusk, its roof sagging like a broken spine, half buried under ivy and rot. Henry would have noticed it if not for the smell. Sweet decay, like honeysuckle left to ferment. Why, the door hung open, a black grin. Inside, dust swam in his flashlight beam. The walls were papered with Polaroids. Smiling faces, picnic blankets, tents under starry skies. All the hikers who'd vanished since the 70s, all the ones Henry had failed to find. Beneath the photos, shelves groaned under mason jars, not preserves. Fingers. Henry's radio died when he tried to call it in. Static hissed. Then a voice, whiskey rough and familiar. You took your time, detective. It was the voice of Carl Evers, a suspect in the 89 disappearances. A man who had hanged himself in his cell. The floorboards creaked behind him. Henry spun, service revolver drawn. Nothing but shadows, and a child's tennis shoe, caked in mud, placed neatly on the windowsill. He found the bones in the root cellar, not scattered, arranged. A rib cage arched into a tunnel, skulls stacked like pumpkins. Femurs lashed into a ladder climbing the dirt wall. At the top, a hatch. Henry's flashlight caught the symbols carved into the wood. Inverted crosses, eyes within eyes, and a name. Thomas Vale. His brother, missing since 76. The gunshots split the silence. Henry woke on the cellar floor, his ankles swelling where he'd fallen. The hatch was open. Moonlight bled through, revealing a tree stump above, studded with rusted hooks, and a journal. The entry started in 1954. Pa showed me how to bleed EM quiet. The handwriting morphed over decades, names piling up, until the final entry. Detectives here. Let's see if he screams like Tommy. They found Henry at dawn, babbling, his pockets stuffed with phalanges. The shack had vanished. In its place stood a birch grove, each tree marred by tally marks. Forensics matched the bones to 33 victims. The tennis shoe belonged to a girl who'd vanished in 2017. But the journal, gone. So was Henry. Hikers on Black Ridge swear they've seen him. A gaunt figure in a tattered police jacket, dragging a femur like a walking stick. Last fall, a camper posted a blurry video online. In it, a man who looks like Henry stands in a clearing, chanting as shadows coil around his legs. The audio, when enhanced, reveals two voices. You took your time, detective. Let's see if he screams like Tommy. The post was deleted, but the woods remember. Black Ridge remains closed to the public. Park rangers report finding fresh tally marks on the birches each spring. And sometimes, when the wind dies, you can hear a service revolver fire. Once, twice, then silence. Appalachia. Just the name itself tasted like damp earth and whispered secrets, like the rustling of unseen things in the deep woods. Sarah and Ben, city dwellers escaping for a weekend of hiking and scenic drives, were about to learn the true, chilling weight of that name. They were about to stumble into a corner of the mountains where the map ended, and something else entirely began. The GPS glitched, the screen flickering, then dissolving into a scatter of digital snow. One moment, they were cruising along a smooth ribbon of highway, sunlight dappling through the autumn leaves. The next, with a disconcerting lurch, their sedan was spitting gravel and dust as it veered onto a narrow, unpaved track. Shortcut, Ben muttered, more to reassure himself than Sarah, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes in the rearview mirror. He knew, and Sarah suspected, this was anything but. Wrong turn. Terribly, irrevocably wrong. The road, if it could even be called that now, constricted, the asphalt dissolving entirely into rotted earth and loose stones. Towering trees, ancient and gnarled, leaned in from both sides, their branches interlocking overhead, choking out the already weak sunlight. A premature twilight descended, casting the narrow track in perpetual shadow. Silence swallowed them whole, a silence so profound it was unnatural, oppressive. The usual forest sounds, birdsong, the rustle of small creatures, were absent. Just the grinding of their tires on loose gravel, the laboring hum of their engine, and the unnerving echo of both, bouncing back from the dense, watchful woods, echoing back wrong. Then, a sign, a weathered wooden plank, nailed haphazardly to a leaning post, half hidden by encroaching vines. The paint was faded, peeling, almost illegible. But Ben squinted, slowing the car to a crawl. Zident. Creek. He read aloud, his voice losing its forced cheer, replaced by a flat uncertainty. Silent Creek. Doesn't ring a bell. He checked the GPS again, the screen still stubbornly blank, mocking them with its digital static. Nowhere. Silent Creek was nowhere on their map. Ben swore under his breath. A sharp, frustrated sound swallowed by the heavy silence. Zara felt a cold prickle crawl up the back of her neck, raising goose flesh on her arms despite the lingering warmth of the afternoon. They were off course. Deeply, unsettlingly off course. The village materialized abruptly, as if the woods had grudgingly parted to reveal it, then would close again, swallowing it whole. A cluster of perhaps a dozen cabins, huddled together in a small clearing, each built of rough-hewn logs, their roofs sagging under the weight of moss and neglect. Smoke, thin and gray, curled lazily from a few chimneys, the only sign of life at first glance. Then, the people. They were there, at the edges of the clearing, on porches, by doorways. Watched. They simply stood and watched. Motionless, silent, their faces turned towards the car like carved wooden masks, unsmiling, unwelcoming. Something in their stillness, in the unnerving intensity of their gazes, sent a fresh wave of icy dread through Sarah, swallowing her growing unease. Ben pulled the car to a stop in the center of the clearing, near what might have once been a general store, its paint long peeled, windows dark and vacant. "Excuse me?" Ben called out, his voice echoing too loudly in the oppressive quiet. "We're lost. Could you point us to the main road?" A man detached himself from the shadows of a porch, stepping forward slowly, deliberately. He was tall and gaunt, his clothes rough-spun and faded, blending almost seamlessly with the gray-brown tones of the village. His face was deeply lined, weathered like the ancient wood of the cabins, and his eyes were like chips of flint, cold, hard, and utterly devoid of warmth. He stared at them, unblinking, for a long moment, the silence stretching, tightening. Finally, he spoke. "Leave," he rasped, his voice like dry leaves, skittering across cracked pavement, a sound that seemed to carry the dust and decay of centuries. "Don't stop. Don't ask. Just leave." He didn't offer directions, didn't offer help, just that chilling single word, delivered with the weight of a curse. "Wrong road," he added, almost as an afterthought, but the simple phrase coming from him hung in the air, thick with unspoken, ominous meaning. Ben, despite the growing unease crawling beneath his skin, felt a flicker of irritation. "Hey, we just need to know how to get back to the highway," he insisted, trying to keep his tone even, reasonable. "Which way?" He never finished the sentence. A soft hissing sound, like escaping air, punctuated the silence. It came from the front of the car. Then, another hiss, from the rear, flat tire. Almost simultaneously, Ben's eyes widened. He looked at Sarah, then back at the villager. He hadn't moved. He just stood there, watching, those flint eyes unblinking, a flicker of something unreadable in their depths. Ben got out, slamming the car door with more force than necessary, the sound echoing jarringly in the stillness. He knelt beside the front tire, then the back. He didn't need to touch them to know. Flat. Both on the same side. Sidewalls neatly, surgically sliced, not punctured by road debris. Sabotage. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. Cold dread, sharp and visceral, clamped around Sarah's heart, stealing her breath. Trapped. Deliberately, malevolently trapped. Of course, no cell service. Ben held up his phone, the screen displaying the dreaded no signal message. He cursed again, louder this time, the frustration in his voice now edged with a raw, undisguised fear. "Damn it, Sarah," he muttered, slamming his fist against the hood of the car. Damn it all to hell, walking out. It was the only choice, the only option left to them in this nightmare scenario. Daylight, already weak, was fading fast, bleeding away into the encroaching shadows of the mountains. They started walking, retracing their route, the gravel crunching loudly under their feet, each step seeming to amplify the oppressive silence of the woods. The forest pressed close on either side of the track, a wall of dark green, deeper shadow. Twilight deepened, blurring the edges of the path, turning familiar shapes into looming, threatening figures. Every snap of a twig underfoot, every rustle of leaves in the growing breeze, every imagined sound, and some that might have been real, sent jolts of adrenaline through them. They jumped at shadows, their nerves stretched wire-tight, the hunted feeling settling in, cold and clammy, a second skin of fear. Then, behind them, faint at first, but steadily growing louder, a rhythmic thudding started, not the uneven stumble of an animal. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate footsteps, not just one set, multiple, coming closer, matching their pace, then quickening, matching their increasing panic. Pursuit had begun. The wrong road hadn't just led them astray. It had led them directly into a hunter's trap. They broke into a run, stumbling on the uneven ground, branches clawing at their clothes, whipping across their faces. The path ahead dissolved into near darkness, swallowed by the rapidly gathering night. Behind them, the thudding footsteps accelerated, relentless, gaining ground, and then cutting through the rush of blood in their ears, through their ragged breaths, through the pounding of their feet on the earth. They heard it. Laughter, faint at first, carried on the wind, but growing louder, closer, echoing through the trees, a chilling, inhuman sound that twisted their fear into absolute, paralyzing terror. They weren't just lost. They weren't just trapped. They were cornered, and the hunt had well and truly begun. The Appalachian Highway stretched like a black vein through the mountains of West Virginia, its asphalt cracked and swallowed by creeping mist. Donna Harper, 34, gripped the wheel of her beat-up Honda, the dashboard clock glowing 11:47 p.m. She'd taken this route home from her sisters in Charleston a dozen times. 2 hours of winding curves and pine-choked silence. Tornado. The dark felt alive, pressing against her windows like it wanted in. She'd been driving 20 minutes when headlights flared in her rear view. A car, distant but steady, matching her pace. Dana squinted, adjusting the mirror, probably just some late-night trucker. The radio fizzed with static, cutting through the hum of her tires, until a faint sound slipped in. The whistling, low and tuneless, drifting from the static. She smacked the dial off, but the quiet was worse, thick and watchful. 10 miles later, the headlights were closer. Too close. She sped up, the Honda's engine groaning, but the car stuck tight, a dark shape in the fog. Her palms slicked with sweat. She flicked her high beams, catching glimpses of twisted trees clawing at the sky, their branches like skeletal hands. The whistling returned, not from the radio, but outside, faint, carried on the wind through her cracked window. At mile marker 73, her gas light pinged, half a tank gone. She cursed, spotting a flickering sign ahead. Earl's fuel stopped 2 miles. The headlights loomed larger, a predatory glint. Dana floored it, the car behind her swerving slightly, its engine snarling through the mist. She pulled into Earl's, a rundown shack with 1 pump and a buzzing neon sign. The other car slowed, idling at the lot's edge, lights dimmed but watching. Inside, the attendant, Earl, she guessed, a wiry guy with a gray beard, looked up from a cigarette. "You all right, miss?" he asked, voice gravelly. Dana nodded, shaky. "That car's been tailing me since Charleston." Earl's eyes narrowed. "Highway's bad news lately. 4 women gone missing this year. Last seen driving this stretch. Cops ain't found squat." He stubbed out his smoke. The hiss sharpened the stillness. She glanced outside. The car was gone. Back on the road, the tank full. Dana's nerves jangled. The fog thickened, swallowing her headlights, and the whistling crept back. Closer, clearer, a human pitch weaving through the trees. She checked her mirrors. Empty. Relief flickered, then died as headlights snapped on behind her. Sudden and blinding. The car was back, hugging her bumper. Its horn blaring once. A long, guttural wail that shook her bones. She pushed 70, tires squealing on the curves, but it stayed glued to her. A shadow shifted in her mirror. Not just headlights now, but a shape in the driver's seat, hunched, featureless. The whistling swelled, filling the car, and her phone, dead since the gas station, vibrated once, screen blank. She swerved onto a turnout, gravel crunching, and killed the engine, hands trembling. The car rolled past, slow, its taillights' red eyes fading into the mist. Silence pressed in, broken by the rustling. Leaves stirring outside, though the air was still. Dana locked the doors, breath fogging the glass, and waited. Minutes stretched and headlights flared again, coming back. She fumbled for her keys, the engine sputtering to life as the car stopped 20 feet ahead, blocking the road. A man stepped out, tall, lanky, in a dark coat, face lost in shadow. He stood there, motionless, the whistling rising from him, sharp and deliberate. Dana slammed into reverse, tires spinning, and whipped around, tearing back toward Earl's. The man didn't move, but his car roared after her, gaining fast. She hit 80, the Honda shaking, and saw Earl's light ahead. She skidded into the lot, horn blaring, and stumbled inside. Earl grabbed a shotgun from under the counter. "Stay here," he growled, stepping out as the car screeched to a stop, its driver vanishing into the fog before Earl could aim. Cops arrived at dawn, finding nothing. No car, no man, just tire marks and Dana's story. She drove home shell-shocked, swearing off that highway. The next night, a woman named Lisa Cole vanished on the same route, last seen at Earl's, tailed by a dark sedan. Her car turned up abandoned, keys gone, a single scratch on the hood. Duh! Dana saw it on the news, her blood icing over. Months later, safe in Pittsburgh, she still hears the whistling, faint, drifting through her apartment walls at night. Last week, a gas receipt slid under her door. Earl's logo, dated that night, with "See you soon" scrawled in red. She burned it, but the fog rolls in her dreams, and those headlights never fade. It started as a simple adventure, something they had done dozens of times before. Mitch, Kyle, Brandon, and Eric were the type of guys who lived for urban exploration. Abandoned buildings, forgotten subway tunnels, derelict asylums. They spent their weekends chasing the thrill of discovery, documenting their findings for a small but dedicated Reddit audience. But this time, they weren't looking for just another decayed structure. This time, they were going deep into the Appalachian Mountains. Mitch had found an old coal mine on Google Earth, tucked away in West Virginia's dense wilderness. There were no official records of it, nothing on modern maps. It was a relic, long forgotten by the state, an entrance barely visible beneath a collapsed rock face. But from what he could tell, the tunnels extended deep, untouched, unexplored. A perfect find. They left early Friday morning, hiking for hours through thick underbrush, guided only by GPS and Mitchie's printed satellite images. The deeper they went, the quieter the forest became. No birds, no wind, just the sound of their boots crunching against dead leaves and loose gravel. When they finally found the entrance, they almost walked right past it. A rusted metal door, half buried in rock, tilted on its hinges like it had been forced open from the inside. Mitch was the first to step inside. The air was dense, heavy with decay. The walls were damp, lined with rusted steel beams that creaked under their own weight. Their flashlights cut through the dark, revealing a tunnel that stretched endlessly forward. They moved carefully, excitement mixing with unease. The mine was eerily preserved, untouched by graffiti or vandalism. Old rail tracks ran along the dirt floor, leading deeper into the abyss. They followed them in silence, their footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. Then, a smell. It was faint at first, barely noticeable over the musty scent of wet earth, but as they pressed on, it grew stronger. Rot. Eric coughed, pulling his hoodie over his nose. Jesus, something's dead in here. Kyle swept his flashlight across the cavern ahead. The beam landed on something shiny, slick, plastic. A pile of it. They stepped closer, their breath shallow. The bags were stacked carelessly, some half-torn, their contents spilling out. Mitch hesitated, then knelt down, reaching for the nearest one. His fingers trembled as he peeled back the plastic. A face stared back, or at least what was left of one. The skin was gray, stretched tight over bone. The eyes long since rotted away, leaving only black, hollow sockets. The stench was overpowering, thick enough to taste. Kyle gagged, stumbling backward. Oh my God. Oh my God. Eric's flashlight trembled in his grip. Dude, what the fuck? There were more. Dozens. Some fresh, some years old, all wrapped in identical black plastic bags, each tied off with the same knot. Brandon stumbled back against the tunnel wall, breathing hard. We need to call the cops. But before anyone could move, a voice, low, calm, coming from deep within the mine. Did you boys get lost? They froze. The voice was too close, too calm. Kyle's flashlight snapped off. They were swallowed in darkness. Footsteps echoed from somewhere ahead. Slow, deliberate. Eric gripped Mitch's arm, whispering, "Run!" And they did. They bolted back the way they came, lungs burning, twisting through the maze of corridors. Kyle tripped, screaming as he hit the ground. Mitch yanked him up, heart hammering. The footsteps never sped up. Whoever was following them wasn't in a hurry. Because he knew the mine better than they did, they reached the entrance, bursting into daylight. Mitch spun around, expecting to see someone, a man standing in the shadows of the tunnel watching them. But there was nothing. Just the dark, yawning mouth of the mine. Waiting. Watching. They called the police. Reported everything. A team was sent to investigate. Armed with forensic gear. Cameras. Cadaver dogs. What they found? A mass grave. The bodies were tied to missing persons cases from all over the country. People who had vanished without a trace. Some had been missing for over a decade. But the worst part? They never found the man. Not a single footprint. No evidence that anyone had been living there. Just the bodies. And fresh drag marks. Like someone had left in a hurry. Like someone was still out there, waiting for his next delivery. Months passed. The case stayed open. But no suspects were ever found. Mitch stopped sleeping. Brandon moved out of state. Kyle refuses to talk about it. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, Mitch swears he hears it. A voice. Low, calm, whispering from the dark corners of his house. Did you boys get lost? The Appalachian Trail, a ribbon of wilderness snaking through ancient mountains, promising breathtaking beauty and solitude. But even in that beauty, death walked hand in hand. Experienced hikers knew the inherent risks: unpredictable weather, treacherous terrain, encounters with wildlife like bears and mountain lions, the simple, terrifying ease of getting lost. But some disappearances on certain stretches of the Appalachian, they were different. They whispered of something beyond the natural dangers, something else. Years. It had been years stretching into a decade of whispers turning into rumors, rumors solidifying into chilling local legends. Veteran hikers, seasoned woodsmen and women, vanishing without a trace. Not naive day trippers wandering off trail. Not reckless teenagers unprepared for the wilderness. These were experienced people, meticulous planners, experts in navigation and survival. And yet, they were gone, swallowed whole by the mountains, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a creeping sense of dread on the trails they'd once loved. Always on the same stretch of trail. Always with the same eerie details. The Blackwood Trail. The name itself became a curse, a hushed warning passed between locals and seasoned hikers alike. Locals avoided it altogether, their voices dropping to reverent whispers when they spoke of it, saying the mountains were hungry there, that the woods breathed wrong. Search and rescue teams, brave and dedicated as they were, always encountered the same baffling, chilling dead end. The hiker's GPS signal, tracked diligently, always died, cut out abruptly and completely at the exact same geographical point on the Blackwood Trail. Then, nothing. Absolute silence. No signal, no trace. No bodies were ever found. Not a scrap of clothing. Not a discarded backpack. Not a telltale bone gnawed clean by scavengers. Gear vanished too. Expensive GPS units, specialized hiking boots, durable tents. All simply gone, as if the hikers had stepped off the edge of the world, walked through a tear in reality, leaving no echo behind. Trail logbooks, maintained at trailheads and shelters, began to fill with increasingly unsettling, increasingly chilling last entries, scrawled handwriting in hurried ink, fog rolling in fast, unnatural speed, compass spinning wildly. North is wrong. Heard voices, no one there. Something watching from the trees, cold eyes, don't feel safe. And then silence. The next entry, always skip their names, jumping to the next hiker, leaving a blank, gaping hole in the record, mirroring the holes they left in the world. Park rangers' faces itched with weary concern, traded uneasy, knowing glances when the Blackwood Trail was mentioned. Animal attacks was the official, carefully rehearsed line. Mountain lions were known to roam. Bears were always a risk, but the forced confidence in their voices didn't reach their eyes. The silence behind their official pronouncements screamed liar. They knew. They all knew. Something was wrong on Blackwood. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. Something beyond mountain lions and bear attacks. Something that defied logic and reason. Something ancient and hungry. 2 more vanished just last fall. A couple. Experienced, meticulously prepared, boasting top-of-the-line gear and years of Appalachian hiking under their belts. They'd laughed off the local whispers, scoffed at the legends of Blackwood, confident in their skills and technology. Their GPS signal cut out. Right there. The infamous vanishing point on the Blackwood Trail. Blackwood swallowed them whole, same as the others, leaving behind only a frantic 911 call placed just before the signal died, and then nothing but static. The pattern, chilling and undeniable, solidified into cold, hard fact. Blackwood claimed its own, fueled by a morbid curiosity and a stubborn disbelief in the supernatural. Despite a lifetime spent hearing whispers and half-truths in these mountains, I went looking myself. Ex-ranger, seen my share of woods, tracked bears and rescued lost souls. Thought I'd seen it all. But Blackwood was different from the trailhead. Even before I set foot on the trail proper, the air itself felt heavy, thick with an unnatural stillness. Wrong. Silence wasn't peaceful here. It was predatory. The sun, even on a clear autumn day, seemed dimmer somehow, filtered through an unseen layer of shadow, casting the woods in a perpetual, unsettling twilight. My brand new GPS unit, state-of-the-art, military grade, died instantly. Flickered once, the screen dissolving into meaningless pixels. Then utter blackness. Same spot as all the others. The Vanishing Point. Just a slight uphill slope, unremarkable trees crowding the trail. No discernible landmarks, just dead technology. My compass, a reliable analog model, spun wildly, erratically, the needle twitching and shuddering as if fighting against some unseen force. North was meaningless here, electronics useless. An old primal fear, buried deep in my bones, began to stir, rising like cold bile in my throat. Ignoring the icy tendrils of apprehension, I pushed on, deeper into the woods, following the faint trace of the trail. But even the trail seemed to resist, fading, dissolving underfoot, overgrown and indistinct, as if the woods themselves were actively erasing it. Thorns snagged at my clothes, unseen branches whipped across my face. The air grew colder with every step, my breath misting in the frigid stillness despite the mild autumn day. The sounds changed. The silence remained. Yes, but it was no longer empty silence. It was a listening silence. A silence that felt aware, expectant, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting. The feeling of being watched intensified, a prickling awareness that settled on my skin, raising every hair on my body. Not animal eyes, not the casual curiosity of a deer or the predatory gaze of a mountain lion. Something intelligent, patient, observing, assessing. The trees, I swear they seemed to lean closer, their branches twisting into grotesque skeletal arms, their shadows lengthening and deepening, moving in ways shadows shouldn't, stretching and distorting into impossible shapes. Then, the smell. Faint at first, almost masked by the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, but undeniably there, growing stronger with each step I took. Sickly sweet, cloying, like honey left to rot, fermented and gone bad, overlaid with a sharp, metallic tang, the unmistakable iron scent of fresh blood. Not animal. Too sweet, too human adjacent. Something else, something wrongly alive, or perhaps terribly, definitively dead. That smell, that cloying sweetness mixed with blood. It broke through my carefully constructed wall of skepticism. It triggered something primal, something deep in my animal brain that screamed danger, screamed wrong. Turning back became more than a rational decision. It became a desperate, instinctive need for survival. Turning back, now, fast, but the trail was gone. Vanished as completely as the GPS signal. No path through the trees, no discernible break in the dense undergrowth. Just trees, towering silent, watchful trees in every direction, forming an impassable wall around me. Panic, sharp and cold, tightened my throat, constricting my breath. Direction, utterly lost. The sun, a hazy, weak disc barely visible through the suffocating canopy, offered no guidance, no solace. Every direction felt wrong, deeply, terrifyingly wrong. Lost, truly lost. Running became instinct, blind, desperate flight. And then, behind me, I heard it. Not footsteps, not human pursuit. Something worse. A rustling, a dragging, a heavy, wet scrape moving through the undergrowth, closer, faster than any human could run. Faster than any animal I knew. Gaining, cutting off my retreat. I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't just lost. I was being hunted. Truly, irrevocably hunted by something in the Blackwood. Something that claimed hikers, that silenced GPS signals. Something that left behind only whispers and the sickeningly sweet scent of rot and blood. And it was closing in. The Appalachian Trail snaked through Tennessee's mountains like a jagged scar, its pines clawing at a sky bruised with dusk. Ellie Grayson, 29, trudged along, her backpack digging into her shoulders. She'd set out for a solo hike. 3 days of solitude to clear her head after a brutal year. But a wrong turn hours ago left her lost, the trail markers swallowed by fog. Her boots sank into mud, the forest humming with cicadas, when a faint glow winked through the trees. A cabin, impossibly clean against the wild. Ellie stumbled closer, her breath puffing in the chill. The cabin gleamed. Freshly painted logs, windows spotless, a chimney puffing smoke like a promise. She knocked, the sound swallowed by the woods, and pushed the door open when no one answered. Inside, warmth hit her, but so did the sight. Human skulls lined the walls, dozens, their empty sockets staring, jaws wired shut. Her stomach lurched. The air carried a sharp, metallic tang, like blood baked into the wood. She backed toward the door, but the rustling stopped her. Dry leaves crunching outside, slow and deliberate. Ellie froze, peering through a window. Shadows shifted among the trees, too tall for animals. Her eyes darted to a table in the room's center, where a leather-bound diary sat, its pages splayed. She flipped it open, hands trembling. May 12th. Female, 26, runner. Took her near mile 47. Clean kill. Her throat tightened. Paja stretched back years, each entry a hunt, a life snuffed out for sport. The rustling grew louder, circling the cabin. Ellie slammed the diary shut, her flashlight beam darting across the skulls. Some cracked, others polished like trophies. A low hum vibrated through the floorboards, steady as a heartbeat. She lunged for the door, but it wouldn't budge, locked from outside. The hum sharpened into the whistling, faint and tuneless, seeping through the walls. Her pulse hammered as she yanked at the knob, wood splintering under her nails. A window rattled, someone testing it. Ellie grabbed a fire poker from the hearth, its iron cold in her grip, and ducked behind a chair. The whistling stopped, replaced by the scraping, metal dragging across the porch, slow and deliberate. She peeked out. A figure stood in the fog, tall, broad, in a hunting jacket, face shadowed under a cap. He tapped a machete against the railing, the sound a dull, rhythmic clang. Ellie's breath hitched. She scanned the room. Skulls, diary, a trapdoor in the corner she hadn't noticed. She pried it open, hinges groaning, and dropped into a crawl space, landing on damp earth. The air reeked of rot, her flashlight catching piles of bones, human, gnawed, stacked like firewood. The scraping paused above, then footsteps thudded, heavy, searching. She crawled deeper, mud slicking her hands, until her light hit a rusted hatch in the wall. She shoved it open, tumbling into the woods as the whistling flared behind her. Close, too close. Ellie ran, branches slashing her face, roots snagging her boots. The footsteps followed, crashing through underbrush, relentless. Her lungs burned. But she spotted a ranger station's faint outline through the trees. She pushed harder, the cabin's hunter gaining. His breath a ragged snarl cutting through the fog. The station loomed. A shack, lights off. She pounded the door. No answer, and turned as the man emerged, machete glinting. He stopped, 10 feet away, tilting his head like a predator, sizing prey. Ellie swung the poker, missing, and he lunged, blades slicing her arm. She screamed, kicking his knee, and bolted inside as he stumbled. She barricaded the door with a desk, blood dripping, and found a radio. Static, then a ranger's voice. On our way! He hammered the door, wood cracking, the whistling rising into a howl. The desk buckled as headlights pierced the fog, rangers, guns drawn. They dragged him down, Royce Tanner, 52, a recluse with a rap sheet of assaults. The cabin held evidence of 7 missing hikers, bones, diaries, a kill room under the floor. Cops figured he'd been hunting for decades, blending into the trails. Ellie survived, scarred, back in Knoxville, but the woods cling to her. She hears the rustling some nights, leaves stirring outside her window, though the street's bare. Last month, a package came. No return address, just a photo of her at the cabin door. Snapped that night with "next time" scrawled in black. The road to Mercy, West Virginia, doesn't exist on any map. Mark and Jenna discovered this when their GPS died 20 miles outside town, their sedan coughing to a halt on a gravel road strangled by kudzu. The air smelled of pine and gasoline. Jenna checked her phone. No service. While Mark popped the hood, steam hissed and something glinted in the engine. A rusted fishhook tangled in the fan belt. Sabotage, Mark muttered, but the woods swallowed his words. The town appeared at dusk. A cluster of clapboard houses hunched around a single gas station. A hand-painted sign read "Welcome to Mercy, Pop 127. The attendant, a gaunt man in overalls, smiled with too many teeth. All needed tow. His name tag said Eli. They followed Eli's pickup into town. Porch lights flickered on as they passed. Faces pressed against windows, pale and still as porcelain dolls. Dinner at May's Diner was fried chicken and sweet tea. You'll stay at the inn, May said, not a question. Her eyes lingered on Jenna's diamond ring. No sense driving after dark. The innkeeper, Mrs. Haggerty, led them to room 3. The wallpaper bled sepia-toned roses. Checkouts never, she wheezed, dropping a key stained with something brown. Mark found the first clue in the nightstand drawer. A Polaroid of a couple at May's Diner, dated 1987. The woman wore Jenna's exact sweater. Coincidence? Jenna said, too fast. But her hands shook. At midnight, footsteps circled their room. Jenna peered through the keyhole. A child stood in the hall, clutching a doll, with no face. You'll stay forever, the girl whispered. The doll's head turned. Morning brought fog and the sound of axes. The gas station was closed. Out of fuel, Eli said, though the pumps gleamed wet. The garage? No parts. The phone booth? Lines down. Jenna noticed the posters plastered on the general store. Missing they read with faces from every decade. A 70s hippie, a 90s businessman, a 2010s influencer. All last seen at May's Diner. All last seen at May's Diner. Tourists get lost, said the store clerk, bagging their jerky. His name tag said Eli. Mark froze. The real Eli was outside, pumping gas. They fled on foot, following railroad tracks out of town. The woods thickened. Jenna's anklet twisted in a trap. A nest of fishhooks and piano wire. Voices echoed behind them. Lanterns bobbed like fireflies. Mark pulled her into a hollow tree. They watched as Mercy's residents gathered, chanting names. Their names. New blood for the roots, Eli intoned. Mrs. Haggerty raised a jar of dark liquid. For the blight, dawn found them back at the inn. Their room had changed. Jenna's clothes hung in the closet, decades out of style. Mark's face stared from a new resident. Poster on the wall. The window, once overlooking Main Street, now showed a cemetery. Rows of markers bore their names, dates empty. A knock. Mrs. Haggerty smiled, holding 2 steaming mugs. Welcome home. A hiker found Mark's phone in a ditch last fall. The last video shows Jenna waving from May's diner, her smile too wide. You'll love Mercy, she gushes. Behind her, the missing posters are gone. In their place, a new sign popped. 129, the postmark on the hiker's photo. Mercy, WV, a town that doesn't exist. Travelers on Route 219 report seeing a diner lit by kerosene lamps. Locals advise, don't stop. Don't eat the chicken. And if you hear axes in the woods, run. The blight is hungry.